I'm Juliet Scott-Croxford, and this is Women and Worth, a new podcast series from Worth Media.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights
For the record,
are human rights.
Feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights.
You told the world that time's up on violence. You told the world that time's up on silence.
Justice is not a concept we read about in a book. Justice is about how much ladies get paid.
They say it's a myth, but it's not a myth, it's math.
This is the best time to be a woman. I want young women to really understand that and believe it. It's not that there aren't barriers. Of course there are barriers.
This is season 1 of Women and Worth, Female Fortunes. At this point, we've worked hard, shattered that glass ceiling, and now that we've accumulated a small fortune to call our own, we want to invest in meaningful causes that continue to drive progress forward. But where should we start, and how should we think about philanthropy today? Angie Sabel joins this episode of Female Fortunes to lend some insights. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Juliet.
Thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Angie is the managing director of Abbott Downing New York, an asset management company advising high net worth families, foundations, and individuals. She joins me in New York City. So I want to set the stage with a positive stat. 86% of wealthy individuals in the US say that giving back to society is an essential part of their lives. As an accomplished asset manager, how do you see this play out in the lives of your clients and society more generally?
I think about when the timing is right. You know, we get to meet families through so many different, I say, life cycles where they inherited the wealth, they created the wealth, they're still looking to build the wealth. And the most important thing is when the timing is right. An example is when families have told us, you know, we want to take care of our family first. And then once we get that stability, we want to help the community. And then we want to get the feedback from our family, what we want to do together.
This first season of the podcast considers investment opportunities for women throughout major life stages. When should people start thinking about giving back to social causes, for example?
You know, when I have conversations with families, we always ask, what's their goals? What are their wishes? And then now we always incorporate, what are your intentions? Because they always think like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And we always say, first, let's reflect on yourself. What do you want to do? And that's the reflecting of the intentions that we talk about. And then I think when they're honest with themselves and they share with their family what they want to do, it gives them the freedom to explore. And I think a lot of times they think, okay, do I write a check? Do I send something to my school, my alma mater? And then I always say, like, what are you interested in? What do you want to learn more about? What do you want to explore? Those are the new avenues to, find on, philanthropy, community, giving back, or sharing.
And can you share a little bit about what are the different options when it comes to giving back?
The most traditional way is, somebody wants to write a check, right? I think now people want to be more connected to it. They want to do their due diligence. They want to know what is this purpose, what is the purpose of the funds for? Can they restrict it to things that really align with what their family wants to do and their interests and their goals? Like, what do they want to help build? It's a great thing now where you can see they write agreements. It's like almost a contractual agreement with, the school or the entity. They really outline it. They hire lawyers now. They draft it up. And it really captures the spirit of it. And they do it over multi-years. They'll say, like, the first year, we want to see what you guys do with our donation. And then they say, like, once we feel that it's accomplishing what we want, then it's almost like it could become the second year and third year. So it's a commitment in both parties, the donor and then the recipient, and how they really apply it to the greater good of what the family wants to do.
And with all these new ways of giving, how are you seeing people think about their communities, their cities, and even our country?
I'll start locally. I love the word community. I think when families say, you know what, we raised our children here, we built our business here, multiple generations have lived here, and they look around, they say, this is not what we had imagined, and we want to first start with our community because we want to stay here. And if it's not the direction it's going, they're like, we have the power to make the difference. And I've heard this one time, a family member say this to me, we want to give where there's been a shortfall in government government support. And I like to think that now I hear a lot of public and private partnerships, what the family wants to do on a private level, and then getting the commitment from the local leaders to say, hey, you know what, we'll help, but we need your commitment. And when you commit, you're not going to change the laws on us, that it doesn't benefit the community, it doesn't benefit what our family wants to do. And I think when they think of who can we pull, I heard a lot of times stakeholders, who are the local leaders, who are the business leaders in that, in the community, and who are the other families that really want to stay in that community and make it better again.
I've spoken to a number of philanthropists recently, and they've talked about actually giving back more locally because they feel closer to what they're impacting and supporting, and they can actually track it better and track the impact of it better. Have you noticed that with your clients in terms of the focus, whether it's local versus national or even international?
I agree with you. I think because it's local, they see it. They live in that community. They work in that community. They see how it benefits what's around them. And I think if you could see it, you can feel it, and then you believe it, and then it continues.
In researching for this episode, I found quite a bit of literature on how children often inspire parents to give, and that parents hope that their giving will in turn impact certain values on their children. What have you noticed when it comes to the role of family in individual giving?
I notice now when parents will say, instead of using your allowance for your personal, let's use your allowance to do something that you want to do. And then it gets the curiosity of the kids at any age, grade school, all the way to high school, what they want to support. And it could be something that the school is promoting, something that their friends are doing. And I think it gets them to start thinking, sharing. How do I share this? How can I make this better? And I think it gives the children a confidence, a sense of attachment, I did this, I helped this person. And it just becomes natural into adult life. You share, you help, and then you find things that are interesting to you, and you find people that you want to work with and help.
I love that. It's like early learning giving.
Yes, yeah.
So how do millennials differ from Gen X or baby boomers when it comes to philanthropy? Have you noticed?
It's neat because when I hear millennials, when you read, they're not curious or they only think of themselves and they feel entitled. I think of millennials, anybody younger than me, and I'm so motivated by how curious they are. I love that they ask questions. They're not afraid to ask questions. 20, 30 years ago, people always qualify. Is this a stupid question? I love millennials when they just ask. They want to know, they're going to ask. And then they say, okay, then let's do something about it. I think their curiosity makes me curious to dig more with them, what they want to do.
We'll be right back. Let's take a moment to hear from Carrie Schwab Pomerantz, President of Charles Schwab Foundation and Senior Vice President of Charles Schwab, official launch partner of the Women and Worth podcast.
It's got to start with financial literacy in the schools, and it's something that has to continue on in the workplace. In fact, I think if we're going to change this whole lack of financial literacy, we need all sectors of society to come together.
I want to move on now to how women are impacting giving specifically. Over the past few decades, women have gained new financial freedom that previous generations could have only dreamt of. For example, following her divorce from Jeff Bezos, Mackenzie Bezos joined the Giving Pledge, which is a commitment started by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett to give away 50% or more of your wealth within your lifetime. How are we seeing women influence philanthropy?
I think now I see that they have a freedom to make that decision. I think historically I've felt or read or experienced that, they're very respectful of what the family wants to do and who created the wealth. And now that there's this freedom to make those decisions, I think has empowered women to say, this is what I want to do, and this is what I've contributed to this as well. I have just as many rights as, my husband or my spouse to create this.
And so research shows that women tend to give more to philanthropic causes than men. What differences have you noticed in advising women on these issues?
I think if women are very nurturing and caring for their family, they knows that this is for the greater good. There's a bigger purpose, and they feel like that is instinctively what I want. Like, this was given to us. We've, as a family, have these resources. We are to share it and put it to where it's of greater good for the community and for our family to feel good that we were privileged and lucky, and how can we help others that can benefit from this.
And how do you go about advising women on how best to make a meaningful impact?
There's so many ways to structure the gift. I think it's what they want to do with that gift. Do they want to be a part of it? Do they want to stay anonymous? Do they want maybe a gatekeeper to help them? But I think it's connecting to them what they want the gift to be, and then we can help them structure, like the advisors and all their friends can help them structure the gift. And if they want to be attached to it, and if they want to be where it pays it forward, you hear a lot. Make an example out of this. They communicate to the community, like, I've done this, and the reason why I've done this is for, whatever the reasons are and what the purpose is. And then it kind of holds the community accountable too, like, I've done this and this is the goal and this is the purpose, and let's see if it really does do what it's supposed to do.
And we're living in a time where economic inequality is at levels unseen since the Gilded Age in the late 19th century. How can philanthropy help solve this issue, do you think?
I think it's early what we just talked about, Juliet. I think it needs to be public and private partnership, and it needs to be new and fresh ideas. And I agree with you. This, giving pledge, I think those have worked, and I think the world needs to hear something new. Like, feel engaged, feel enlivened, feel powered. And sometimes a new idea, people just catch on. There's like a new momentum. And I think when it's more the general population and private people that have the resources, when they come together, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. I think that kind of partnership really works.
We've talked a bit about public-private partnerships. Can you just describe for our listeners what is a public and private partnership?
Sure. I think about, when a family is very entrenched in their community, their town, their city, and then they approach either the board, the council, the mayor, and say, we have this vision for our community. Tell their story. Why are they so passionate? And then they find an alignment to the public resources and see if there's something that is aligned with what the family wants to do. And through that, they can build it, and then they open it to the general public. It could be a vote, it could be a memorandum, it could be, but I think it has to be something that the families approach government. It has the public officials, because I think if it starts there, then the government officials will feel that, okay, we have a committed, we have a resource. Now, is it aligned with what we want to provide for the community?
And the public and private partnership piece is really interesting. We recently did a piece on the Bright Line train in South Florida with Virgin. Can you give me an example of other public and private partnerships that you think have worked well?
I love the idea of a smart city. Actually, I'm going to say the word smart cities, because now you see it all over. And it's not just, the San Francisco, New York City, Palo Alto. I think it starts with an idea, and then other people have picked it up, and other communities have picked it up. And I think I just heard recently Dan Doctoroff, what he did in Toronto, or what he's doing in Toronto. He's taken his years of experience with the Bloomberg administration, New York City, a 3-term, and taken it to a city, province, and a country that embraces that you live and work, and then you can really thrive as a community. And I think he refurbished an abandoned area, and now everything can survive in one community, and people want to live there. And then when you have the government, the public support, it's only success from there.
Angie, as we end our conversation, I want to ask, 25 years from now, what conversation do you think we'll be having about women's progress?
I think about when women makes milestone or just monumental contributions, and If we think about maybe an all-women, executive team or all-women board, and that first company that does that, it becomes a synonymous word with like something greater, So yeah, it'll be a word that if a first company or first contribution and people start using it as a verb or a noun that identifies something grander than it was, yeah.
How do we get there?
You know what? We hold people accountable. We measure them, we put time frame on it, and we ask. I think it's really important that we're really specific on our ask, and the people that have the power and the decision making to make that, and we watch them. The public holds them accountable.
And finally, what does worth mean to you?
I've known Worth now for, I think, over 10 years. And when I think of the people I've met at Worth, we have such a shared interest, and maybe it's our family of doing something greater. I think about when people say that when you share your ideas or you share your best thinking with your competitors, is that something that we shouldn't do, we frown upon? But I think it makes our industry, it makes our community better for our families that we work with. So if we can all do that, then I think we're doing something right.
Angie, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliet.
That was Angie Sabel, the Managing Director at Abbott Downing's New York office. And that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Please rate and review Women and Worth, or better yet, subscribe on your favourite listening app. Stay tuned for our next episode focusing on pivot points and career development. Until then, I'm Juliet Scott-Croxford. Women and Worth is produced and edited by Kasia Brusalian. Special thanks to Worth's Senior Vice President of Strategy and Growth, Alicia Hamilton. This episode is supported by our official launch partner, Charles Schwab. For more investing advice, visit www.schwab.com.